overview from the ADDPC. Thank you.
Hi everyone, yes, I'm Sarah, and thank you, John, for that intro. I work as the Community Relations Specialist for the Arizona Developmental Disabilities Planning Council. We are hosting this presentation today, and I noticed that our registration limits were hit last week, so it's clear there is a lot of interest in teens with disabilities, particularly developmental disabilities, in foster care. So today we'll discuss some ways families and professionals can help these kids transition to adulthood, and that's why we've invited some experts on the topic to speak. So I'll provide a brief introduction and then hand things over to our first presenter. So our first presenter will be JC Farkas. She joined the University of Arizona's Sonoran University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities in 2007. She directs the Person-Centered Initiative there. That includes leading projects for youth with DD and developing community tools. JC's interests lie in youth transition, person-centered practices, diversity issues, and information accessibility. We'll also hear from Melissa Kushner today. She serves as the Protective Services and Tribal Liaison for the Division of Developmental Disabilities. Melissa's career has focused on children and youth with DD in the child welfare system. She's also worked on vocational rehabilitation and employment supports. Melissa currently provides technical assistance and conducts workshops. Our third presenter will be Barbara Gillen. Barbara has worn many hats over the years. She's worked with Head Start, served as a pre-K teacher, supervised an independent living skills program, and she transitioned to State Independent Living Coordinator for the Department of Child Safety back in 2011. She actively focuses her work on helping young adults in and aging out of foster care. So thank you again, everyone. And JC, I will be passing the reins off to you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. We have up now on the slides right here just a little bit of, our names or contact information here that you guys can reference for later. Briefly, each of us will kind of give a little bit more information and tell you a bit about our agencies if you aren't familiar with them. So the Sonoran USID, as John mentioned, the Sonoran USID is one of two here in Arizona, along with IHD at NAU. We consider ourselves, and really USIDs in general, as the bridge between academia and the community. We are funded by the Administration of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, and we're tasked with doing research, community programming, information dissemination, and training of future professionals and current professionals within disability fields. And so we work really closely with our other partners within the DD network, which includes our other state USED, the Protection Advocacy Agency, the Arizona Center for Disability Law, and the agency hosting our webinar today, the DD Planning Council.
Hello, today this is Melissa Kushner, and I've been working with the state for over 21 years, and most of that time has been with the Division of Developmental Disabilities. And what DDD does is serve individuals who have autism, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, or a cognitive or intellectual disability. And we try to support the choices of individuals and provide supports to enable them to live with their families in homes and be as involved in the community as they would like to be. We've worked really closely with Sonora and USAID to promote this person-centered planning for members during life transitions. And this particular project is the one that I have been most involved with. And I'll hand it over to Barbara.
Hello, this is Barbara Guillen. I just want to share a little bit about the Department of Child Safety. I think most people are aware that we are the child welfare agency, but if you didn't know, we are guided by a core of principles, and that is that we want to see all Arizona's children are safe and protected from harm, that all Arizona's children live safe and loving with forever families, and that all of Arizona's children are given the opportunity to thrive through support of strong families and their communities. And because Arizona, we do have youth who are in or involved with the Department of Child Safety in foster care, and they are also involved with DDD. So that is why I participate in this program as well. Okay, so to go over today's objectives, we just wanted to really discuss the context of foster youth and exiting care, discuss youth who are both in foster care and involved with DDD, describe the Picture of Life project, highlight concepts of person-centered planning and thinking, and share a youth participant perspective. Okay, so what do we know? We know in child welfare there's nationally around 400,000 to 500,000 children currently in foster care. This is a downward trend, and we are actually seeing this in Arizona as well. Our numbers were higher, but now there are about 18,000 children currently in our child welfare system. This is a little bit of an older number of youth aging out of foster care at over 23,000, but I'll tell you that here in Arizona, about 700 youth reach the age of majority and leave foster care every year. And again, that is here in Arizona. So just to share some thoughts about what foster care has been and what it has been, what it currently is, and hopefully what it will be. We'll share a little information about what's going on with foster care. So in the past, youth have not experienced life in what we would consider normal, traditional family experiences when they are in foster care, unfortunately, much of the time, due to they're not able to participate in a lot of activities, that the case manager or the court needed to approve certain things prior to them participating, and it made it very difficult, and again, not a traditional childhood or young adult experience for youth. Currently, something new, this is in the past just over a year, I guess, there's reasonable and prudent parenting standards. Caregivers are now given prudent decisions, are now allowed to make prudent decisions to allow youth in foster care to participate in age and developmentally appropriate activities. This occurred through the Strengthening Families Act that was signed into law in, I guess it's over, sorry, the year, September of 2014. And really, I think the big thing for many of our older youth who live in group homes, now those group homes have the ability to make some of those reasonable and prudent parenting standards that we did see happening in foster homes, but oftentimes it was not the experience of young people who lived in group homes that got to experience activities, after school sports, going to a friend's house, free time, those types of things without case managers or court approval. So youth in foster care, what do we know? We know that they can experience periods of great instability. Oftentimes there's a lot of movement in placements. This leads to young people, children and young people, becoming disconnected. As I said, many foster care placements, and as youth get older, unfortunately, we see less in foster homes and more in group home settings. We also see many of our young people, for lots of different reasons, dropping out of school, running away from homes, from their home or their placement, and certainly a lack of consistency in their family situations. And one of the most concerning thing we see for certainly our older youths is that they don't have adult mentors or what we consider to be dedicated adults in their lives to assist them in their transition to adulthood. And what we want you to think about is that all children and young people should really have people in their lives, and certainly young people coming from traditional homes have parents that want their children to become mature, self-sufficient, happy adults, that they're productive, that they can be employed, that they have good relationships. And really it is the parent that assists them in getting there. Oftentimes they provide that nurturing environment where they can explore, learn, and grow. And they also provide the safety nets, as many of our young people don't experience. But again, to think about, that's the expectation we should have for all children, including those who are in foster care. Unfortunately, we do have some negative outcomes for youth as they transition out of foster care. They are more likely to drop out of high school, with only about 58% graduating from high school. They're less likely to attain post-secondary education. They experience homelessness. Many of them struggle with no health insurance. We see employment issues and low wages, and those are a lot to do with their not completing high school or attending post-secondary education programs. We see a high number of pregnant young women, especially by the age of 21, and secondary pregnancies, which are very concerning. And then the arrest rate for youth who've experienced foster care. It's 1 in 4 will be involved with the justice system within 2 years of leaving foster care. Again, those are really concerning numbers. So what do we have to try to combat that and better the lives of young people? Here in Arizona, we have the Arizona Young Adult Program. Many people can hear of the YAP program, but we do call it the Arizona Young Adult Program. It is a statewide support for older youth who are in foster care. This came about really in 1999 when the John H. Chafee Foster Care to Independence Act came about and was signed into law. It doubled the amount of funding that the federal government provided to states to really assist youth as they transition to adulthood. It also expanded the ability to provide for youth, not just until they received a high school diploma, but afterwards, and also if they were just in care at 16 and above with aftercare services. So our program, we really look to identify youth who have been likely to remain in foster care until they're 18. And then we want to provide assistance and programs to youth so that they can work towards self-sufficiency, and whatever that looks like for that individual child or young person, it's always very different. But we just want to make sure that the services are provided. So assistance with their education, do they need tutoring? Has anyone talked about career exploration with them? Is vocational training? Often our young people may not go to post-secondary education, but is there a vocational training program that they might be interested in? This came about, this next bullet really had to do with the new normalcy standards of the new normalcy, sorry, and that is to engage youth in age or developmentally appropriate activities. We want to make sure that we're working with youth to find jobs at 16 and above. We want to make sure that they know daily living skills, that they're able to budget. One of the big things for many of our youth is if and when they do receive money or funding, direct funding after 18 without good budgeting or management skills, they're not able to use those funds in an appropriate manner because they haven't been shown and maybe haven't lived in a traditional family, which is sitting down, talking about bills, paying bills, and that type of thing. We also want to make sure that our youth are receiving any substance prevention and make sure that they're participating in healthy activities. It's very important that those things are occurring. So on this slide, I just wanted to share there's some differences in what youth are eligible for, but at 16, once a youth is been in foster care and out-of-home placement at 16 years of age, they will be eligible for education and training vouchers. This is up to $5,000 a year for post-secondary education. This also funds vocational programs, and we see, again, a lot of our youth participating in those vocational programs. Arizona also enacted a tuition waiver program. This is for only 4 community colleges and Arizona community colleges and state universities, but this does provide an assistance to youth to cover the cost of tuition. And then our education and training vouchers can come in later and hopefully assist with some housing needs costs. All youth are also eligible for the Transitional Independent Living Program. After they're 18, this provides supports and services in looking for a job, if they need to locate mental health providers, if they're looking for what type of school or, again, need some evaluations or career counseling, they can assist with that in that program. Once youth turn 18 and are in out-of-home foster care, they have the ability at that point to stay in care. We call that a voluntary agreement. That agreement is between the department and the youth. And really, it's really just a new case plan. It's to address their transition to adulthood, and that they understand they're accepting personal responsibility and being part of the plan. Oftentimes, young people in care don't get the experience of doing things on their own, and it's quite a shock when they turn 18 and they need to. So ideally, their plan has to do with education, job-related and therapeutic needs that they may have, and how the state, how DCS assists them in that transitional plan. Also, just so you know that youth who are in care, who turn 18 in care, can pretty much stay where they're at. At 18, it doesn't have to be a surprise where they're going to live at 18 in one day. They can continue to stay with that foster parent. They can continue to stay in that group home, or maybe that family or kinship placement. They can continue to stay in that and be in a voluntary with the department. Some youth who show the readiness and meet the eligibility can participate in what's called our subsidy program. This is to assist youth with the cost of room and board. If they're in a paid placement, such as a group home or a foster home, they wouldn't be eligible for that because it is, again, to assist with room and board. But it does allow the youth to experience receiving funds directly and ideally developing a budget and paying their bills and really getting that experience to have money, to save money, and to learn how to save or how to spend the money appropriately. And so you're all aware with some of the new health care regulations, youth who turn 18 while in foster care are all enrolled in our Young Adult Transitional Insurance Program. This assists youth with their health care up until their 26th birthday. The positive thing about this is if they fall off of the insurance, they can get right back on. There is no income requirement, so youth can earn money and continue with their medical coverage, and especially for many of our youth who need continued mental health services. This is a really important program and insurance that youth are involved with.
Okay, so now let's talk a little bit. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit now about youth and children with disabilities that are in the foster care system. Statistics on these children are very difficult to find, in part because of the inconsistent and inadequate reporting methods that states use to collect their information. But these are some of the statistics that we were able to locate. Studies purport that anywhere from 20 to 60% of foster children have some level of disability, and this is any type of a disability. This is not developmental disability specific, but that is compared to 10% of the general population. And then for youth who have been in foster care and have aged out, over half of them have behavioral health concerns as well. That's compared to 22% of the general population. And some of the most common things that they've experienced, that 50+ percentage, is post-traumatic stress disorder, and that's compared to 4%. And then 20% of them have experienced a major depression. So in Arizona, as of July 2016, there are over 866 children in out-of-home care that are served by DCS and DDD. This is a match that we do through a file that is shared with us by DCS, and names and social security numbers and birth dates all have to match. So I'm sure that there are more kids that are involved in both systems that we're not tracking at this point. But we right now have 149 youth age that are 14 to 18 years of age that we share with DCS, and 23 young adults age 18 to 21 who are still involved in the after the voluntary program that Barbara spoke about. But we also do know that youth with disabilities that are in foster care are at much greater risk. They're more likely to be maltreated in the system. They have more placement instability, more likely to stay in foster care longer. They have poor educational outcomes, and they are less likely to achieve permanency. So I think that these are some of the challenges that we face on a regular basis with the youth that we're serving that are in the system. Another major issue that we have is that many of these youth are involved with multiple systems. If they have a developmental disability, then there's a good chance that they have several specialists that they also see. I see a very large number of, especially our youth, who are dually diagnosed. So they have behavioral health diagnosis as well as their developmental disability diagnosis. And so they really need support to understand the services they're receiving in order to transition to the new systems once they enter adulthood. And there tends to be a lack of consistent educational transition planning. I think one thing that Barbara mentioned also, I see the teenagers seem to bust out of placements really frequently. They have multiple placements, which unfortunately means that they're changing school systems regularly, which could very well lead to many of them not even having an IEP in place when they go from school to school because it hasn't followed them. And then we often find that the transition-specific services that are available aren't necessarily tailored to meet the needs of the youth with disabilities. One of the major disability-related issues that we see is the need for self-advocacy skills. But I would say that all youth who have been in foster care need to learn these self-advocacy skills because they've spent all this time in a system that's made all these decisions for them, and they've had very little say. So the self-advocacy is such an important piece for any child that's aging out of the foster care system. So how did this project come about with the USED? Let's talk about that a little bit. So for over 20 years, DDD actually had legal custody of the DDD-eligible children and youth who were in the child welfare system. DCS was responsible for taking the reports and doing the investigations, but once a child was made dependent by the court, if they were eligible for our program, they were transferred over to DDD. And we had specialized foster care units in Maricopa County and Pima County. Those foster care units performed all the child welfare functions that DCS provides. They did reunifications, severances, adoptions, as well as handling all of the responsibilities that we had with DDD requirements. Consequently, when we had those cases, we were the legal guardian. And so when they aged out, it was just natural that we would provide all the services that they needed at that point, regardless of that All-Tex eligibility. But back in 2009, they made a decision that they wanted to transfer all the child welfare functions back to DCS. So that meant that DDD was no longer the legal guardian of these kids. And we became very concerned that these kids were going to fall through the cracks with CPS, especially when they were aging out of the system. So we created what we call specialized DDD foster care matrix units that are co-located in CPS, now DCS offices, to enhance the collaboration on shared cases. So we have DDD support coordination staff in DCS offices in Maricopa County and in Pima County. It's not statewide, but those two areas have the majority of the cases. We also developed protocols for how we're going to work together. DCS and DDD work together. And also because of these concerns, we contacted the Sonoran USED to talk with them about whether or not we could develop some sort of a tool to help youth with planning for their transition, to help improve the outcomes that Barbara spoke about. DDD had worked with the USED before on person-centered planning projects, so we felt this was a perfect match. So the name of the project that we have is Creating a Picture of Life for Transitioning Youth with DD in the Foster Care System. As a result of our inquiring with the USED if they would work with us, they submitted a grant proposal to the AZDD Planning Council, and we now have this collaborative statewide project that's funded by the Arizona Planning Council, which we're very grateful about, and it is managed by the Sonoran USED and DDD. And we are targeting youth, young adults, age 14 to 18 with developmental disabilities to help make their transition into adulthood more successful. And we've tried to focus on the non-All-Tex eligible youth first because they don't have that safety net of All-Tex services, one of the most important of which is the residential services that can be provided if they're All-Tex eligible. So in order to improve these transition outcomes for the foster youth with DD, we're trying to develop person-centered plans built on their strengths and helping them realize their dreams and what kind of choices they actually have. And by the same token, trying to help increase their knowledge about the different options that are available. Sometimes they don't have any clue about Voc Rehab, for example, or other agencies that might be out there that they could benefit from. We try to build on these strengths with a collection of informal and formal supports and different community networks to support the young adults so that they'll have somebody outside of the child welfare system. And then something that we've added over the last couple of years is we are trying to support the youth to attend self-advocacy and determination trainings through a partnership that we have with the independent living centers in Phoenix and in Tucson, which are able and direct. So some other goals that we have are to train person-centered planning facilitators and to grow the cadre of people able to facilitate plans here in Arizona. And ultimately, the main goal is to improve services for youth with DD exiting foster care in Arizona by giving them a way to learn to exercise meaningful choices that have such an impact on their lives. And now let me pass it over to J.C. Farkas.
Thank you, Melissa. So kind of to frame a little bit of, now that we have some of the, overarching goals and pieces of the program, just to give a little bit of background for anyone who may not be as familiar with person-centered planning. So this is a process that is directed by the individual who has a disability. And really we have a facilitator that helps to, coordinate the process, help the individual identify goals for living in the community, how to access and best utilize informal as well as formal services and supports to achieve their goals. And really we're trying to, with a person-centered plan, to create a comprehensive, portrait of who the person is, what they want to do with their life, what their skills and abilities are. We're really this is a process that's really looking at an individual's strengths. It's not deficit-based, and how can we build upon those strengths to achieve some of the goals that they want. And we're bringing together, as typically you want to bring together as many of the people who are important to the person as part of their life. And for, unfortunately with most of the youth that we're working with, family or biological family aren't always as has much of a presence with the youth. And so we tend to have mostly our professionals that work with them, but we try to encourage as much as possible to have friends and other folks who they want to have as part of the planning process, who can really give, speak to who they are and what they're good at. So as I said, this is not deficit-based. It is not an attempt to fix the person. It's not a behavior plan. It's definitely not a standardized process. And this is very individualized and speaking to who the youth is and what they want for their future. And unfortunately, especially with this population, there tends to be a dwelling on reputation and labels when we look at some of their, their ISPs or their individual support plans or their child family teams with GCS. That unfortunately sometimes you see certain incidents that have happened in the past that continue to follow a person. And so we're really trying to, in some ways, move past that and see where we can go in the future, where they are now and moving towards the future. What it is a great way to really organize the information about the individual, and it's important that's in as plain language as possible because this is that person's plan. And a lot of, like as Melissa mentioned, so many of these youth are a part of different systems, and we all kind of have our own jargon and speak in terms within each of our, our respective disciplines. And so it's really important so that everyone's on the same page and that the individual can understand as much as possible for it to be in plain language. The purpose is really to look at towards a desired future, giving respect for choices, promoting valued roles. Really, this should be a very positive, and respectful process that really looks at an individual's capacity, their strengths, their interests, their desires, and that really gives an accurate picture. And probably one of the most important pieces is that it is action-oriented. While we are creating a profile for an individual, a plan is just a plan, a piece of paper that needs to make sure that there's actual implementation and is action-oriented. So person-centered planning is really based, around person-centered thinking, which really looks at the principles of inclusion, self-determination, family, and I would say informal support, and really the social model of disability versus the medical model. And we're trying to really look at a balance between what is important to a person, that's their interests, their desires, and what is important for a person. So that's issues of health and safety, as well as kind of what society, overall kind of societal, what's the word I'm looking for? Standards, I guess you could say. So meaning, whether that's dressing appropriately for an interview or anything like that. So what's in the best interest of the individual. And really we're looking toward moving towards a community life from a service life. And like I said, it's not just about paper and having better plans, but we really want people to have meaningful lives that they have more control of. And that really should be directing themselves as much as possible with whatever help and support they might need. And so, as I mentioned, it's really an individual right to have control over, what their future is going to be, as much as possible, to exercise choice in what their day is going to look like, where they're going to live, who they're going to spend their time with, where they're going to work, and just really have as much say and control as possible in the supports and services they receive. And here's kind of another way of looking at it. Some people here may have seen some of these slides before. All of us, regardless of our labels or abilities, really want to be a part of our communities, to be supported by our communities, and contribute as much as possible. And so, that includes, dignity of risk, being able to try new things, change our minds, and learn and grow from any mistakes we've made. And as we attain new skills and just life experience, to be able to, make the decisions we want, and really, one of the examples I usually like to give with this slide is that often it's like, okay, if we've had one thing happen and maybe it didn't go quite as well with the person, that's just the end of it, and we're not, we may not think, oh well, we need to try, we don't need to try that again, or at this point it didn't really work out. But really we need to have the chance for people to have the chance to change and try new things. Most of us who were at 16, 17, 18, what we thought we wanted to do in life, like how many of us are actually doing that now in our adult life? Like how many people change their majors in college or have changed their career fields over time? So it's really important that even some of our folks who might be our most vulnerable, have intellectual developmental disabilities, that they have those opportunities too to try new things, change their minds, and see where life takes them. So here's kind of a slide that is, talking about how we really want to move folks from a service life to community life as much as possible. And that can be a bit of a challenge with this population, because so much of that is focusing on connecting and building relationships and natural supports. And that can be difficult with this foster youth population. I think I saw someone mention in the chat box earlier too about I'm sorry, where did that go? I just wanted to, I know John is tracking these questions, but there was something, about there being maybe mentors, but no one that they can trust because they've been moved around, don't have stable adult connections maybe in their life, that it's harder said than done to help really build some of those close relationships, people they can depend on, so that when they have exited care, that there's still some of those folks to provide some of that guidance and mentoring beyond just their case managers. And with person-centered planning, we hope to try to build into that and find other ways that we can have bring in more folks from their community and build more natural supports around these youth. And so a person-centered plan, it's a living document. Like I said, we want to have not just better plans, but better lives. And so really, once you have one, I tell folks tell the youth it's theirs, it's a journey, it's a process, and that we continue to build on it, learn from it, with our action plans and implement it, what's worked and how can we improve upon it. And over time that it really can be utilized and gone back to advocate for services and supports, and used as a foundational plan really for any of the different service plans that a youth might have. So I definitely see a person-centered plan as a great advocacy tool. And this is just kind of reiterating a little bit of even what Melissa and Barbara said earlier, of what we really want to hope for any individual, and we just want to make sure that this is also happening for some of our most vulnerable populations. And so with our plans, some of the common components that we try to address with all of the youth, their history, health factors, best qualities of a person, the different relationships they currently have, how they might communicate, where they spend their time, choices the person's already making, what supports are needed, what their vision of the future is, what are some of the barriers to that, and really we want to see how can this individual be supported best. And then, of course, the action planning is so important. And so here's our main vision that we have and that we're operating our program on, is that young people with disabilities moving from school to adult living will be knowledgeable about the full range of choices available to them for successful adult living, and we'll be able to exercise that choice as part of a person-centered planning process that incorporates both informal supports, paid supports, and community networks as much as possible. And so with this project, we've brought in a lot of other entities to try and make this project as sustainable as possible. I should mention that we're actually in our 4th year with this project with the DDPC, and we've learned a lot each year in trying to make this program better. And we've continued to bring in and cultivate more relationships and collaborations with other entities so that we can really bring bring this eventually to as many youth as possible, and make it as sustainable as possible so that we aren't relying as much on grant funding. And so other than us working with Barbara and the work that she does in the transition programs for DCS, we're really, we work with the legal guardians for the youth to participate, and we're really trying to increase the involvement of case managers in the person-centered planning process and other aspects of the project as much as possible. As Melissa mentioned, we're working with the 2 largest independent living centers in our state, so Direct in Tucson and Ability 360, which was formerly ABLE in Phoenix. We've been working with them for 3 years to provide summer self-advocacy and self-determination kind of workshops through the Picture Your Life Academy, where we've, this last year we've met for 8 weeks and, imparting different skills related to self-advocacy, self-determination, and independent living to really help promote informed decision-making and have more involvement in the community. We've also been lucky to work with the Office of Children with Special Healthcare Needs, otherwise known as OCHN. We've kind of worked out with them to add another piece of kind of the self-advocacy and determination around their health, is utilizing healthcare organizers, which they've developed. And so we have a partnership with them where they've provided some train-the-trainer models so that our team and our facilitators can work with the youth to create their healthcare organizers with the hopes of improving long-term health and well-being. And it's a way for the youth to really have ownership of their own health information, and to be able to advocate for themselves with whatever health-related services they're receiving. And so that's been a great addition to that, and we've also incorporated that into the Picture of Your Life Academy as well. So something that helps to support this program and that we've been working closely with is with VR. DDD and VR have developed an MOU specifically for foster youth who are enrolled with DDD. And so there are 2 dedicated VR counselors who work exclusively just with this population. And so we make sure that as we're starting to plan with youth, that that youth are referred, and we bring in those counselors in to be a part of that team. And as Melissa mentioned, so many of the youth are also dually diagnosed and are in the behavioral health system, and so we are really trying to work closely as much as possible with them too to bring on so that they're really part of the person-centered planning process with the youth, and that everyone is part of a concerned effort working with each of the youth. And hopefully we can kind of foster a better cross-systems coordination through this planning process. And so a bit of the programmatic overview. We currently have, as Melissa mentioned, we've been training, each year we've kind of trained more facilitators, and those that we train over a 2-day period, we ask them to apply to be a facilitator for the project. And so we do have 19 facilitators that are connected to the project, and we have 10 who are currently active. We're now, like I said, in our 4th year, so over time, some with things that are happening in personally in the facilitators' lives, they might step out for a little bit and come back to the project here and there to work with the youth. And that we've been working with Michael Small, who is a national, really an international expert in person-centered practices, and helped with spearheading kind of the development of the essential lifestyle planning method of person-centered planning. We've been working with him each year. He's provided ongoing support and technical assistance and provides webinars for our facilitators. And we recently just had him in town to do a larger workshop for the community as well on youth transition and person-centered practices. And so, the bulk of what we're doing is working with the youth to develop person-centered plans. And so we have 35 youth who have been associated and enrolled with the project. We have a total of actually 28 plans that have been completed so far. And we'll share a little bit later about some of the challenges that have been in working with the population and getting some of these plans completed. Because you might say we're in our 4th year and we've only had 28, but there's definitely a lot of things to really consider that we've learned from to build upon each year in working with these youth. And so, and as I mentioned, we've had our Picture of Real Life Academy, and over the last 3 years, we've had 20 youth participate between. Oh, okay, sorry. Between all of them, and I just got a note saying that we don't have much time left. I do want to mention that with this project, we're doing evaluation, and some of the perspectives that I've included here from the youth about what they have to say about the project are from some of the evaluations that we've done so far, which include interviews and surveys. Along with the planning itself, there's been challenges with the research. Not as many of the youth who are actually in the program are actually part of the research aspect, but we've been able to try and also look at some other outcomes for this. Regardless of their participation in the research part of it. And so we are trying to meet certain benchmarks around what's included in the plans and if youth are self-reporting is feeling better prepared for high school. And so I'm not going to go through all these because I know we want to have a little bit of time for Q&A. And you guys do have access to the slides in the download file pod off to the bottom right of your screen. And so I do just want to leave that I feel like we have been making a bit of a difference, and that the youth who have been going through the program, they feel like they are benefiting from it. And a few of the slides here go into some of the challenges that we've had and that we've tried to build upon with each year. And we have resources that are available at the end of this that are part of the slides, as well as just to give a little note here of some of the other items that are in the download pod. There's our brochure for the project in case you know of anyone else who might be interested in participating. We have the info sheet that we give to all the members of the planning team who are working with the youth, as well as a transition checklist that was developed by Melissa and Barbara specifically for youth who are enrolled in both programs of things that need to be considered and making sure that all their case managers are aware of this. And so we have a little bit of time for Q&A.
All right, this is John. I'm going to move up into the chat record. Earlier on during Barbara's part of the presentation, Verna asked, and then actually I forgot who else asked later. Kim asked later, does the tuition waiver include tribal community colleges? And that was in reference to slide 14, youth in foster care at 16 plus. If someone could address that, that'd be great.
I can address it. This is Barbara. So I did pull it up. It's under ARS, or Arizona Revised Statute 15-1809, so you can all take a look at that yourselves. But what it says is that the youth must be accepted or enrolled in a degree, certificate, or other accredited program at a university under the jurisdiction of Arizona Board of Regents, or a community college under the jurisdiction of a community college district. The person must demonstrate continued progress towards the degree or certificate in order to remain eligible for the tuition waiver scholarship. So I apologize, I don't know in terms of tribal community colleges, but if they fall under, I guess, the Arizona Community College district, then that tuition waiver would apply to them.
I just placed that link to ARS 15-1809 in the chat, so if anyone would like to go to that.
Thank you.
No problem. The next question came up during Melissa's part for slide 25 on the goal section. Have any dates been set for upcoming facilitator trainings? If I remember the slide, it was about a cadre of trained facilitators.
This is JC, and I both could speak to this. We are trying to plan something in the fall, and so we will make sure to send something out to the participants so they know when it's going to occur. You want to say anything else about that, JC?
No, I think you know, the other thing is, if you're interested, you can always send information to me, and we'll make sure you're on a list that's notified when we have the next training set.
I should mention that the training is free, and I think I also might want to mention that the grant has enabled us to pay some for time for the facilitators of these plans for the kids in foster care.
Thank you. During JC's part of the presentation, Kim also asks, what statutes determine the details of the program? And that was in reference to the PCP, I believe.
I'm not sure I understand the question about what statute determines the details of this program. It's not specifically based on any legislation, if that's what Kim's asking.
I think that all the systems that are involved with youth that will be transitioning to adulthood are responsible for transition planning. It's in all of our policies and procedures, which is another reason it would be helpful for us to all be at the same table.
To follow up with that question, Peggy asks, how long can the youth participate in this program?
Thank you, sorry, and I know we ran out of time for me to really give more in depth about some of this, but so once a youth is enrolled, we are trying to follow along with them over time. So they are part of this program as long as they want to be. And so after they have their the year they enter, after they have their initial plan, they'll have a follow-up, and then every year we ask them to continue to participate, and we do additional follow-up sessions with them, at least 2 in the next year, program year, to see how the plan is being implemented. And then, you know, so we're in our 4th year now. And, you know, so youth are welcome as long as they, you know, ideally we would like them to stay involved with the program as much as possible, and then we know that can't always be the case.
I think we've also found that the earlier you start, the better.
Yes.
We should be starting by 14. They can actually be referred to voc rehab by 14 to learn pre-employment skills, and so they can help with the transition. The youth that we started with who were already 18, it was very hard to impact a lot of things because they were ready. Somebody mentioned they were ready to be away from all of us. They couldn't see the benefit of being involved.
And I should say, when we first started this project, the first year or two, like we actually started at age 16, and we just found that those who are already going on 17, 18, as Melissa was saying, were just not that interested and wanted to, I mean, some of the youth just were wanting to walk away from all of the different systems they were a part of once they aged out. And so I believe in our going into our third year, we dropped the age to 14 to start working with youth early to see how much of that would make a difference.
Awesome, thank you. We have one more question. Looks like Sarah's going to address Virginia's. And JC, in reference to your commenting on no one they can trust for mentors, Andrew follows up with, after being let down all their life by the foster care system, many foster children will not want to trust in any institutions of any kind. How do any of you restore some trust in any public system, including yours? If me, I think I would have said no thanks and still left the system as soon as I turned 18 because I would have felt better making my own mistakes instead of being forced to make mistakes by yet another institution.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah, I was just going to say I think that that's a very good point, and that's what JC was talking about, that when you're dealing with the older kids, that's the case. The key here is to help kids by 14 at the latest to realize what choices they have, what their dreams might be, and what they need to do to get there. And if they go through that process, most of them are going to realize to be independent, or as independent as they can be, they're going to have to work. And a lot of these kids with developmental disabilities really need services to help them with that. So part of it is helping them to see what's in it for them and how it can help.
Excellent. Just as a reminder, there is the Files pod in the lower right of the screen. Any one of those are for download, so you can take your time before leaving the webinar to download all those documents in the Files pod. I want to thank all the presenters. If there's any kind of follow-up questions that you would like, you can most likely email the presenters directly, or you can send something to ihd@nau.edu, and we will find someone to answer your question. All right, thank you everyone for participating. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, this is Sarah. I just wanted to thank everyone on our end as well. And, you know, especially the presenters and everyone who signed up to listen and ask questions today. I know John mentioned this earlier, we will have a recorded version of this webinar available on the council website probably within a week or two. That link will also appear on the council's mailing list. And if you'd like to sign up for that email blast so you can find out about future presentations like the one today, I'm going to put my email here in the bottom chat box. Shoot me a message if you'd like to be added to that, and thank you again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.